Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Hey, welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I was in YFP Community, the closed Facebook group, and I'm not going to name any names or anything like that, anything identifying, but there's a great conversation about lowball offers, or it seemed like that's what it was. And I just wanted to give you some advice to start off with. What do you do with a lowball offer? And a lowball offer, for those of you who don't know, is just so someone comes in, applies for a job, and the employer says, this is what we're going to pay, and somehow that offer is lower, maybe significantly, than what you were expecting. Certainly if you started pharmacy school expecting 120 and you're seeing what there is now, certainly that's going to be it, because the information that you get from the admissions offices and that they keep using is the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is around 120. And what we're seeing for new grads, if they even get 40 hours, which is really unlikely, is going to be significantly lower than that. So let me go over, kind of what to do. I'm going to give you kind of 5 things to do with a lowball offer. The first thing you want to do is not make it, continue the interview and just talk about all the things besides salary that you want to get out there. And then after, you just ask for a little bit of time and just say, hey, I just want to think about this. I want to make sure that we're a good fit. I make the right decision for me and for you. So if I could have X number of days, just let me think about it. Because the first thing you don't want to do is respond emotionally, because you may have no idea what a fair offer is in that area. For example, someone might be giving you an offer that's actually higher. Let's pretend you're in Miami or South Florida, and you go to Walmart and you say, wow, 51 an hour seems pretty low. And then you find out that Walgreens is like 48. And that's just what they offer. But, they give so much flack to the big chains, the big box stores for, first of all, offering over $100,000 or close to $100,000. But the reason it's such a kind of a strange thing that pharmacists are so fungible means you can replace one with the other. If somebody comes from UCSF and someone comes from, a school that's just, graduated their first class, it doesn't really matter necessarily to the store. They're going to care a lot more about your retail experience than they're ever going to care about the prestige or what U.S. News and World Report thinks about your school. And so you've got this offer and just like, a bad offer is zero. That's a really bad offer. So first, appreciate that you have a job or maybe a job lined up, and then ask for some time. Just say, hey, you know what? I just need a little time to think about this. Now it's time to do your research. How much are people in that area actually making? It's with social media, it's so easy to find out. And honestly, I'm pretty much an extrovert, so my wife says I can make friends with a wall, which is probably true. And what you would do is you could just go to some of the local pharmacies and like, hey man, I'm not looking for syringes or anything. I just want to know what people make as pharmacists in this area. And they'd be so relieved that you're not asking for a pack of, syringes or something else. And they'd be like, oh yeah, they make such and such. Oh, really? And go to different stores and find out. Just do your research. Or you can check on social. The YFP community is great. I'm not allowed in the moms group, but my understanding is the moms group shares some salary information and job information. So it's called the Pharmacist Moms Group on Facebook. It exploded. It's a fantastic group. I hear. I don't know. I don't get to go in there. But the second thing to do is make sure that it's in line with what's going on, and it probably is. The greatest concern that an employer has in terms of offering a salary is actually being thought of as discriminatory. They have to offer the same thing to a man, as a woman, as someone of this race or that race or whatever. And that's why it's all standardized. You say, well, I have all this experience. Okay, but if you're in this race and have all this experience and someone else is of a different race and has no experience and they make a significant gap, they could say, well, it had nothing to do with the experience. So fear is really what motivates these kind of strange, static wages. While they're high to start, they really don't go up. And I would not do any planning for any kind of raises anytime soon. I mean, the big boxes are loving what the pharmacy schools are doing, cranking out so many pharmacy students. And the hospitals couldn't be happier because, imagine the hospitals are putting out an extra 300 residencies a year, no problem. How is that possible? Basically, they're just going to their board and saying, hey, we can get a pharmacist for a third. It's like 40 grand, 50 grand. And if they pick us, they can't negotiate at all. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I'm going to guess it's not true. Or it's going to guess it's true because you have to take the offer. If you said, I'm going to do a residency at this site, you're there. Regardless of the offer, it was your responsibility to find out how much they're going to pay you in the next year. And of course, if that differed, then that would be something different. But if you want to talk about suppressing salaries by saying, I want to go here, you've completely given up the ability to negotiate in terms of a salary and things like that. So make sure that, I hate the word fair because they're going to offer what they're allowed to offer. Usually the supervisor has very little wiggle room in terms of giving significant higher salaries than someone else. Then you kind of want to think about, if you're going to come back and try to negotiate, you're going to want to kind of write that up and figure out what you're going to say. And you're going to have to go in there knowing what's your bottom line. Because the reality is that this may be your only offer, and they may be saying, look, you just got to let us know because we've got plenty of people, our phone's ringing off the hook with other pharmacists that would be happy to take this job for this salary. And, are you able to take it? And so, it's the 3-year schools, which do have their place in terms of saving some money. What I'm also seeing is that you can be very young and owe a lot of money. Like you can do 2 years private, 3 years private, year round, and you can be down $250,000 before your 22nd birthday or before your 23rd birthday. So if you're going to go back in there, go in respectfully. You can take a shot at it. Like, look, I've got these loans, things like that. Get them on your side and just say, hey, and they'll probably be straight with you. Like, look, I understand you've got those loans and this is what I can offer. The reality is that the fact that, the pharmacy schools have to now charge, and I'm not going to blame it all on them because the support from the states, especially at the state schools, has shifted from, it used to be 70% state, 30% tuition. Now it's 70% tuition, 30% state. So I'm not blaming the state schools that are kind of at the will of the state and the legislature. And I'm also not blaming some of the older pharmacy schools that have been around because I know that 80% of what they get comes from their tuition. And you're making a choice. You're making a choice to go there. You could go to any state in the country, get a job for a full year, become in-state, and then go to school there. That was your decision to go 1 year earlier. So make sure that you are ready with some research, ready to go in. Actually negotiating, that's going to be a tough one. If you are not comfortable negotiating or don't have much experience negotiating, then you're probably going to lose. The person on the other end not only has experience negotiating, also has kind of all the cards and knows what's going on. And the better thing to do, I think, rather than call it a negotiation, is to have a good conversation and just say, this is, what's going on in my life. And these were my expectations, and maybe they were unrealistic. Maybe they were too high. Can you help me out? And in general, the supervisor can be, oh, yeah, sure. So this is kind of the deal. This is what's going on, and this is why we're going to offer you this, and we certainly want to have somebody that's happy with their salary. We don't want somebody that's not happy with their salary. But go in just saying, I just want to understand it. Now, you can ask for other things, but in pharmacy, it's just not there. The supply is so much higher than the demand. Now, for the rest of the world, I think our unemployment rate is like 2% in Iowa, and the rest of the country, there are more job openings than there are unemployed people. So the issue is not getting a job. The issue is that you've paid X amount of dollars for something, you have a certain expectation, and you're like, really? Did I really mess up that bad? Maybe, maybe you should have gone and just said, all right, well, I like biology, I'll get a biology degree. And what can you do with a biology degree? Well, a lot of people are willing to train you in many different jobs, and they just care that you have a college degree. And sure, you're not going to start the way that you would as a pharmacist who maybe got hired by a big box or something like that. But there are career ladders that are moving very fast because the people simply aren't there to fill the positions. So if there's ever a time to go in an industry where you are completely unqualified, now's the time where they're going to say, you know what? You seem like a smart person. We'll take you. And again, the government, if you haven't switched over on your loans, understands this, and they take their loan money back based on your income. They don't care about your industry. They just care about your income. And then kind of the last thing is you may have to walk away. You may have to say, that's just not going to work. I'm going to have to figure something else out. And you want to be really respectful about it in this way. You want to do two things. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you say, look, it's not that I don't want to work here, and it's not that I feel that you're being unfair. That salary simply doesn't meet the needs that I have. And if I'm going to commit myself to a single job, then where I have maybe very little control over the schedule, then that's just not going to work for my family. However, if something happens where the offer could go up this much, I'd really appreciate it if you would give me a call. That's how you walk away from something like that. It's kind of like relationships in pharmacy. You never want to break up badly because you never know when you'll work for somebody you dated in pharmacy school. Anyway, let's move on to the news. So that's what I would think if you got a lowball offer, an offer that's lower than you expect. First thing is take some time. Second thing, figure out, was it actually a low offer or was it a reasonable offer? And, come in, do some research, get things going, negotiate if you have to and feel that you can, and then say no if you don't. But honestly, plenty of jobs out there, just not in pharmacy. TLDR Pharmacy, How to Verify Medication Orders Like a Pharmacist Boss. Really great article, a lot of fun to read about hospital pharmacy, and I would never put myself in that position. I'd work outpatient, but certainly not inpatient. The Real Life Pharmacology podcast, Tricyclic Antidepressant Pharmacology and Warfarin Pharmacology were the two most recent episodes from Med Ed 101. Ultimate Guide to Student Loan Repayment. I think I saw this one from Happy PharmD before, but maybe it's a little bit different than the one before, or maybe you moved it up. And then Know Thyself, 7 self-assessment tests to take before your next interview. YFP, oh, what a good one. If you want to hear someone that was en fuego, on fire, Tim Ulbrich, holy moly. He talks about his home buying experience. He did not stop to breathe throughout the whole episode. So you can just tell how fired up he was to give this information, to show that he's, he went through the home buying process ignorant. He's gone through the home buying process eyes wide open, understanding things much better. And he was so, as a good educator, he's so excited to share, this is what I learned. Don't make the mistake I did. I want you to do better than I did my first time. I thought that was really phenomenal that he did this. So if you want to know the 10, I'm not going to expound on them too much. He did it yourself. So in terms of, my thoughts on each of these, a first sale by owner, I sure as heck never, I've made the mistake of for buy by owner. We did it once to buy the house that we're in, only because it was 07, 08 when the market crashed, and the real estate fees that 6% was actually so much at that time that it got in the way of us being even able to buy it. So the owner basically owed this much, and we could get this much from the bank. The bank said the house is worth this much. So when you added that 6% or took like $12,000 off a $200,000 home, it made it so the sellers would have to come out of pocket. But by taking that away, so we found a for sale by owner, and that was actually a better situation for us. It actually worked out pretty well. But honestly, when I buy a home, I always now use a realtor. I've done it before. It is it is too emotional a thing. It's even as a real estate agent who'd sold 300 homes, I still couldn't get my emotions under check when I was buying because I was so excited. I only looked at the positive. Really needed a real estate agent to look at the fine print, to look at the things I wasn't seeing. That moves to number 2, understand the fine print. He's the kind of person that does it, whether it's you, your partner, whoever it is. Find the person that's going to read the fine print, make sure they do it, do the best you can. He talked about some things that he didn't expect. It's going to happen. There are some weird things. And for example, I put an offer on a house that cost me a year worth of home buying because I forgot to put in and I thought it would be in there. It's in Maryland contracts. It's not in Iowa contracts. Time is of the essence. And that bit me in the butt. So anyway, read and understand the fine print as best you can. Set the budget. He's just saying don't let the bank set your budget. Bank's like, we'll loan you this much. Banks are getting a little loose with their money again. History repeats itself. So they're going to be happy to loan you what you need or what you want. And set your own budget. Know what you can really afford, and don't forget to put in all those hidden costs. And I'll let him, his episode will talk about those things. Ask a lot of questions. I loved answering those questions, but a lot of times my clients felt that it was a bother, and I made sure to always tell them, hey, it's not a bother. What would be a bother if something happened and we could have prevented it, and it didn't, and it happened that way because you didn't ask me a question. So always ask questions. And usually it's going to be, hey, she'll ask all the questions, and then if you have a question, ask her to ask me the question because you might not feel comfortable doing it. Usually that's how couples work. Put 20% down. That is, and there's good and bad to that. I understand his logic with that, but there are the doctor loans for pharmacists. I know Ed Cremens out in Baltimore does that. 0% down for pharmacists. So if you're talking about leverage and the market goes up, all is well with the world. If the market goes down, you have infinite loss. So wrap your head around that math, but I think he does a good job of articulating why 20% down would be good. Shop around not only for the home, but for the people that you're going to be working with. And he did make a good point. Don't just because one lender has a little bit better rate than another. If one is more responsive, feels like they're going to be someone better to work with the better person. That couple points or bits of a point, not worth it. Consider the total cost of buying the home. So again, look at HOA fees, taxes, insurance, all those things you might see. Special fees that come along with where you live, maybe a city tax. And that's, I think, what he talks about, number 8, hidden costs. The emergency fund, so obviously it's nice to have going in there, but make sure you keep an emergency fund after you go in. Don't let your emergency fund be your down payment. If I had my preference, I would buy with 0 down and keep all the money as an emergency fund, but that would be my own personal way of doing it. And then have a great team around you. I know Tim Baker is a fantastic planner. And the Real Estate RPH opened his doors to anyone who wanted to ask questions, and certainly Tim Albrecht, Tim Church are always there in the YFP community to help you guys. So definitely an episode worth listening to. I think it was episode 66 on the Your Financial Pharmacist podcast. On the mothership, RX Pharmacy Owners podcast, Colin Engel, was it? I can't remember how to pronounce the last name, but he had a dedicated podcast to pharmacy ownership. And what is it, helping independent pharmacists work and make the best of the situation that they have now, because it's a bit tough right now to be an independent pharmacy owner. Pharmacist owner's perspective. So you'll hear pharmacy owner David George with Creative Care Pharmacy talk with the Pharmacy Podcast Network CEO Todd Urey. about the pharmacy owner's perspective on a financial partner. And if you're looking to buy, that's definitely a podcast episode you don't want to miss. Value of board certification in geriatrics pharmacy. I know that my wife has CGP, or BCGP as it's called now, and Eric Christensen, meded101.com, is also a BCGP, but he went on to get the pharmacotherapy, and that's kind of something that you decide if you're in a position that you want to be a little more attractive to potential employers in long-term care in those areas. I think that would be a good credential. And then Pharmacy Future Leaders, of course, my favorite. Carrie Riley at St. Louis College of Pharmacy, super excited about her school and how her school treats her students or their students. And certainly, if you're interested in kind of hearing a little bit about Nova Southeastern, a little bit about St. Louis College of Pharmacy, that'd be really fun to do. My own APPE student Abby will be up this week with someone she's known at the University of Iowa, and that'll be a cool episode, which will probably come out in midweek. Kevin Yee had like a 2-hour special on creating a viral YouTube channel, so if you're interested in getting your social presence moving, I'd definitely listen to that. Epic certifications. So if you're interested in getting an Epic certification, I think Brian Fung did a great job of kind of going over all of that. RX Radio, I saved this one for last because it was probably my favorite of the week. And it was a technology podcast, basically. And if you haven't listened to RX Radio, Dr. Richard Waite, I definitely want you to check it out. It's a pharmacist in big technology, and he has maybe a 45-minute or almost hour-long interview with her talking about all the things that are coming down the pipe and how inexpensive it is. You don't need to get an MBA, an MPH, all these things. You can go on Coursera, get a lot of the technical tools that you need, and you can do that for free. And then I don't know if Hillary had a new episode out. I don't remember. Let me see. Talk to your. I want to say no. Not from the last time that I talked to you guys. Let's see. So, Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast by the Pharmacy Advisory Group, how an OTC product comes to market. So, kind of understanding things from the other end, the product side. And it was a cool interview. Definitely recommend you listen to the Talk to Your Pharmacist podcast as well. All right, well, that is it for me. I'm going to have a great weekend and see my kiddos play some soccer tomorrow. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. But hey, why don't you guys let me know what you guys think about salary offers out there. People want this information, and I just can't pin it down. It's so regional. It's so dependent on the company. So anything you can share is going to help other people.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.